Hello. Today we're talking about elimination diets, the pros and the cons. So this is something that I'm really passionate about because elimination diets, it's something that kept me stuck when I was yo-yoing through different elimination diets. And it's probably what keeps about 70% of my clients that have, before they started the Love Your Skin program, were stuck in this cycle of eliminating foods, but not getting to the root cause. And it's actually what prevented them from healing their skin. So if you are thinking about an elimination diet, or maybe you've tried to cut out sugar, gluten, soy, nuts, kind of the classic things that you're reading on the internet, or if you've started an elimination diet, maybe you are doing keto or carnivore or vegan, vegetarian, maybe low salicylate or histamines, but you're stuck on it. So anytime you try and reintroduce food and try and live a normal life again, you get a flare up, then tune in. I'm going to be chatting about why, the pros, the cons, and then how you can start workshopping, getting to the root cause. So first of all, I would really like to hear where you guys are at. Always love hearing about your guys' experiences. So let me know in the comments if you've experimented with any elimination diets, what you've tried to cut out, and then if it worked. So that way I can get a little gauge of where you guys are at. So firstly, the disclaimer is that not everybody has a food sensitivity. If you don't, you're one of the lucky ones. And it's typically when the body's been in a state of dysfunction for a longer period of time that the food sensitivities start popping up. So if you're before that's happened and before the gut's a total wreck, then you are lucky. So I just want to put that disclaimer on because people can go down the rabbit hole thinking that every single person with eczema has a food sensitivity, but that's not the case. So again, we always need to be making sure that what you're doing with your skin is specific to your symptoms and what you're experiencing, not just following other people's success stories. So I always like to have that disclaimer when I chat about food sensitivities. So first things first. So food can be the best way to heal your body. And I'm obviously very passionate about using food as medicine. But it can also be the biggest source of inflammation. So this is where some of the food sensitivities come in. So there's food allergies and IgE allergy, and then there's food sensitivities, which is more of a delayed response. So there's two different things that we're talking about here. So it is kind of one and the same. Food allergies is more immediate. Sensitivities, there's lots that you can do, and you can heal your body and heal your gut and reintroduce them. It does take time, but you can. A lot of times people just think that, oh, I have this reaction to food and it's a forever thing, but it's not. You can heal your body, which is the really great thing about healing your eczema from the inside out. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to talk about the cons, and then I'll talk about the pros of the elimination diets. So cons is that, okay, so typically what people will do, and this is the common path, is, okay, a lot of doctors will even suggest dairy, gluten, eggs, soy. So they'll start eliminating those. They might get a little bit of momentary relief. So this is very, very similar to what had happened with Christine, if you've seen her interview in the group. So she eliminated those. She got a bit of relief. So she's like, okay, I'm onto something. But then what happened is she's like, well, my skin's not fully healed yet. Okay, I haven't found the right food yet. So then she eliminated more foods, and that's when she started going to the salicylates and histamines. So then she's stuck eating nothing. So in this situation for her, she's created a lot of nutrient deficiencies in her body. So what then happens is that she doesn't have the nutritional building blocks to heal and repair her skin. So to heal and repair your skin, take a lot of nutrients. Every single organ in your body and every single pathway, so digestion, creating neurotransmitters for mood, your hormones, all of these require nutritional building blocks and energy that we get from food. So if you're eliminating these for a long period of time, and you're not going to have the building blocks to heal and repair your skin. Does that make sense? Drop a yes below. So very common with elimination diets is that there's nutrient deficiencies and the body's depleted of nutrients. So you start noticing that your hair is falling out, it's really dry and cracked, your period, you'll start getting painful periods, you get really moody, you can't sleep. All of these symptoms will start snowballing. and your eczema symptom score will start increasing. Very, very common. What also happens is that people will go on an elimination diet and then they get stuck on it. So, for example, Dan, we're doing an interview with him in the next couple of weeks. He was stuck on a carnivore diet because whenever he would eat vegetables, his skin would flare. And this is common. I see this a lot. So people say, oh, I ate healthy, but my skin flared up. I started increasing vegetables, like you said, my skin flared. I'm like, okay, red flag. I know exactly what it is. And so situation like Dan, whenever he would have vegetables, his skin would flare. So he created this loop that if I eat vegetables, I can only eat meat. The only time my skin will be clear. So I have to be on this diet forever. But when we started chatting, his goal was so he could, go out and have a dinner with his family and just feel normal. So then we have to be thinking, okay, well, why? Why can't your body break down these food chemicals in vegetables? So does that make sense? So if there is anybody who has been on an elimination diet and then they eliminate some foods, they get a little bit of relief, but then they're stuck on the diet, drop stuck below, because this is very, very, very common. And so why is that? We always want to be asking ourselves why, because you haven't gotten to the root cause. There's a reason why your body's reactive to these foods. Does that make sense? It's going to be issues with your gut, issues with your immune system, because your body can't tolerate these food chemicals, or and essentially you've lost resiliency, right? And something that I always say is that it's not food that's the problem, it's you. It's how your body's reacting to it. So there are foods like sugar, processed foods, alcohol, that by all means, they cause direct inflammation. So I'm not talking about those because those aren't actually classified as foods. So that is a thing. But if we start talking about different vegetables, and there's a lot of people that are on AIP and like cutting out nightshades, and they do get some relief, but we always want to be thinking why, right? It's not food, it's the body's inability to break it down. So this is going to be issues with the gut, the immune system, and loss of resiliency. I'll say this again and again and again. But does that make sense? So what happens is people will start investigating it, get some relief, but they're not following all the way through, and they're not getting to the root cause of why. Right? Does that make sense? And then another con is that a lot of times this is going to create a really bad relationship with food. And this is where a lot of food anxiety comes in, which we're going to be chatting a little bit more about next week, because it's just common, right? And this is what happened with me. It's that if I eat this food, I get a flare up. So my flares started small and expanded, like from here to here, all my armpits, all up my neck, like crawled up my face, all over my eyes, my chest. And so what happened is I was like, okay, every time I eat any of these foods, I get a flare up. My skin's weeping. I can't sleep. I'm up all night scratching. I have to cancel plans with friends. I don't want to be seen in public. I can feel everybody staring at my rashes. So obviously what happens is I don't eat those foods. So then my brain registers this food is bad. And then all of a sudden you have this bad relationship with food. Food's the enemy. And then you just stop eating these foods. So whenever you do have the foods, it's almost at a point, and this is exactly like most people at the program, is that they can think their way into a flare up. So they start overthinking, is this food going to give me a flare up? But the stress and the anxiety of good food, bad food, is this food going to give me a flare up? What's happening with my skin? I'm just waiting for it to flare. That stress, a lot of times, is what's going to give you a flare up. So that relationship with food is really bad. And the thing is that we want to be able to enjoy these foods, right? There's a big emotional attachment to food because like foods, it's part of us like socially and communally. And we want to be able to enjoy these foods. So we want to be able to get the body in a state where it can tolerate these foods. Does that make sense? Are you guys following me? Drop a yes below if you still follow. Because if you think of your body, so let's say 6 months ago, depending on your health history and when your flare-ups, your hasn't been well since period started. So if 6 months ago, 1 year ago, 3 years ago, you could eat these foods and your skin didn't flare up, turn into a 2-week flare-up, then you know that your body can tolerate that. It did at one point. There's just been dysfunction in that period. Does that make sense? So the aim is to try and heal your body and get it back to the state that it was in before so you can tolerate these foods. Okay, so those are the prawns. I mean prawns, the pros. The cons. So it creates nutrient deficiencies and depletes the body. It doesn't have a nutrient support system to be able to heal and repair the skin. A lot of times people will get stuck on an elimination diet and they can't reintroduce the foods, or if they do, then what happens is they get a flare up. They end up living in a bubble, restricting everything, or having to deal with a flare up. And what's happening is that they're not getting to the root cause of why their body's reacting to these foods, right? And then it can also create a bad relationship with food. So those are the cons. Okay, pros. So I do use elimination diets in practice with clients because sometimes people are really reactive to food and they'll usually feel that itch right after they eat. And if that's the case, then I start workshopping that, but it's a short-term solution. So I did a video on the drops in the bucket. If you haven't watched it, 100% suggest that you do, right? Drops in the bucket if you want to be tagged in the replay. So what the pros of being on an elimination diet, or I call it like a different type of a therapeutic diet, is that you will get a little bit of relief if you have food sensitivities. So if people are in a really, really inflamed state and they're reactive to foods, removing those foods can give you short-term relief. And I'm going to say that again and again, it's short term. So the whole idea is how can we increase the quality of life so you're not scratching all the time and itchy and going through that emotional and physical roller coaster of flare-ups and flare-ups. So we want to get you some immediate relief. But long term, what we need to be doing is, if we think of the body as a flare-up bucket, we need to be draining it by supporting our elimination organs, right? Because you don't want to have to avoid the foods forever. Avoiding the foods will get the drops in the bucket down a little bit, but draining the bucket is a long-term solution. And you do that by we need to be adding foods back in so you can have the nutritional building blocks to support the elimination organs to drain the bucket. Does that make sense? And that's a long-term solution. And then when you do that, then you can reintroduce the foods, and then that you can build your tolerance up to it. So you can build your tolerance up with those foods. So that's the first thing that we do with people if they're on an elimination diet is start adding in foods. And we always do it with the most nutrient-dense foods first, and that are going to support your microbiome in your gut, because that's the actual problem. The problem's in your gut, right? If you've done the IgE food sensitivity, I know right off the bat what's happening in your gut, right? You don't need to spend that $500, $1,000 on those tests because I already know. You can save yourself the money. And a lot of times people will get those results back and think, oh, I can't eat. Like they'll get really, really overwhelmed because you're reactive to so many foods. And then that creates a lot of stress. And then I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, let's do the gut healing. And then in 6 months, that will change, which is a cool thing. So to kind of summarize that, the pro is that you could get some short-term relief if food's an issue. And it is a way to identify some of the foods, but going back to the cons, not getting to the root cause. And so first of all, like, how do we workshop all these? So what you want to be doing is first looking at your symptom score, because all these people with food sensitivities have issues with their gut. I know on the eczema symptom score that they're going to score a high in the gut, and they're usually going to score high in the nervous system as well, the brain-skin connection and the gut-skin connection. The brain-skin-gut connection, all connected. And a lot of times when people do have the IBS picture, which eventually can turn into eczema, that's because of high stress, overwhelm, and some trauma, that brain-skin connection. So always want to be looking at your eczema symptom score. So if you guys have done your eczema symptom score, I would really like to know what section you scored the highest at. If you want to share your actual score below, let me know. And then we can start having you workshop where to get started. And if it's even an issue. All right. I hope all that made sense. If you are thinking of an elimination diet, or if you are stuck on an elimination diet and you would like some help with this, if you would like some help workshopping what the missing piece of the puzzle is, so you can start getting to the root cause, So you don't have to either restrict foods, live in a bubble, or have to deal with a flare up. They're two pretty shitty options to have to deal with. I struggled with that most of my 20s. It's not a great way to live life. If you do want to break out of that eczema flare up cycle, Kessia, the eczema clarity coach, she has, I think she said she had 2 openings next week that had to reschedule. So if you would like to workshop, the missing piece of the puzzle is drop let's chat below, and Kessia can reach out and either send you some resources to help you get started, or if you would like to hop on a call with her, we do think she has 2 slots open for next week. So I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you guys next week.